Can a father disinherit his firstborn son or give him an equal portion in the inheritance? So in a previous halacha we discussed the double portion that the Torah mandated for a father or the estate to inherit to his firstborn son, and the conditions in which that double portion is received. And now we will discuss if it is permitted or is there any legal loophole in how to disinherit the son or equalize his portion to that of the other brothers. So we have a general rule in the laws of Yerusha, inheritance is brought in Choshen Mishpat, chapter 281, halacha 1. Rambam Nechali 6.3, based on the Mishnah in Bava Basra 130a. That a person may not change or alter the laws of inheritance. He cannot inherit to an heir who, according to halacha, is not an heir. He cannot disinherit to a child or an individual who is a rightful heir. In other words, what the Torah said, that's what remains. And as much as he may dislike it, he can't do anything about it legally. This halacha applies whether the father is sick or healthy, whether he makes the changes orally or puts it in writing in a will. In all cases, it's batul u'mevutul, it's worthless. It makes no legal change and has no legal standing in halacha. So if his father said, my son, my firstborn, will not inherit a double portion, his words are meaningless. We ignore him and the firstborn gets a double portion. So is the clear ruling in all the sources we mentioned. Likewise, if the father began allocating certain amount of assets to all of his children for the inheritance, which is permitted, if by doing so he has infringed on the double portion of the firstborn, meaning that the firstborn son will now not get a double portion because of this allocation, then once again his words are meaningless. And as the Ramah concludes in 281.4, that even in areas where the custom is not to give the Bechar a double portion, this custom is to be ignored as it contradicts the biblical law, and there is no such custom according to Allah. Nonetheless, despite these very strong and firm words of the ruling that invalidates any maneuvering of the inheritance, there are legal loopholes of bypassing the above prohibition or invalidation and actually achieving that the firstborn will not get a double portion and in a way that is halachically binding. So how does one do so? So within the previous law that we mentioned that invalidates a swerve or change of inheritance laws, there is the following qualification. That inability only applies when one desires to change inheritance of his assets to an unrightful heir or to remove a rightful heir from the inheritance. If, however, the father already pre-allocates his assets as a present to his children to be in effect right before his death, then it is halachically binding, as in essence he has not changed any inheritance laws, he has simply distributed his assets before his passing. And when you're distributing your assets when you're alive, you can give to whomever you want, however much you want. And whatever is left, if anything, will then follow the biblical law of inheritance. This is called in halacha kinyan and matana. So if the father writes a shtar, a will, of matana, which is in essence a gift and not a will, maintaining that the children will get this and this amount right before he passes away, then it is halachically binding and he can in that way circumvent the need to give a double portion to his child, to the firstborn. There's also another method of how to circumvent the giving of a double portion to the firstborn, and that is called a shtar chetzi zachar, and this is the more popular and more commonly used method amongst estate planning attorneys who follow the guidelines of halacha. This method is called shtar chetzi zachar, which is in essence an IOU addendum to the will, meaning the father writes his will, whatever he wants, to inherit to whomever he wants, however much he wants, which obviously may not follow the biblical law. And how does he place that will, which is ineffective halachically, into effect? He writes an IOU saying the following: I hereby proclaim that if my children or any of my heirs do not abide by the secular will that I wrote, then I am indebting my estate to these and these individuals to such and such a sum of money that must be paid to them from the estate. A practical example: if for whatever reason the father wants to equalize the inheritance of all of his children, even include daughters, which halachically do not inherit in face of sons, he will write the will the way he wants it, and to make it halachically into effect, write an IOU saying that if my sons who inherit do not give my daughter an equal share or whatever share I establish, and if they give my firstborn son a double share, then I am hereby indebting my estate to pay my daughter or my other non-firstborn sons a much larger amount than the worth of the estate, hence leaving nothing for the inheritance at all. This method is written in the Ramachesh in Mishpat 281.7 regarding inheriting to daughters, and it may also be used regarding circumventing the firstborn double portion. Despite all this and all the legal loopholes that are available to legalize the equalization of inheritance of a firstborn, the Chachamim were unhappy with one who does so and finds legal loopholes to uproot the Torah and biblical right of the firstborn son. So writes the Mechaber 282.1, and therefore one should maintain the status quo of giving the firstborn son a double portion. At the very least, and so is a custom today to be done, the estate planning attorney will arrange that some assets, even according to the secular will and the IOU addendum, will be given to the firstborn son as a double portion. It's just that not all the assets will be distributed in that fashion due to the legal loophole of the IOU.